I welcome you all in this webinar on online faculty development program issues and challenges. We will be discussing various factors related with e-learning, uh, the push factors which is basically uh, responsible for the progress of e-learning very rapidly and very quickly in our country. Different kind of resources you need for developing e-learning program, how you can explore OERs and open educational repositories alongside different kind of open access resources, how you can form a 4-quadrant based e-learning approach which is proposed actually by the Ministry of PhD, and how we are doing, and as a teacher what will be our role, what will be the difficulties, and how we can overcome those difficulties. So, let us start. You believe it or not, or admit it or not, the shift already happened. What do I mean by that particular shift? I am coming. In the backdrop, we can say for the last 15 odd years, 4 factors are actually controlling the entire higher education scenario. It's not the effect of pandemic that e-learning started or initiated and making a quantum jump in the higher education scenario. It's not like that. It started actually long back with the advent of open and distributed information system, which we colloquially call, we all know that we call it internet. It is acting as a platform for scholarly communication process. Then the entire internet is based actually built on the top of open source software and open standards. So, open source software like you see 95% of the web servers we are using are running on the top of Apache, which is an open source web server program. Then more than 65% of the servers in the internet are running by using any kind of Unix like operating systems, different flavors of it. We call it Unisys. So, those kind of open source software are actually acting as building block for different services of internet, and these open source softwares are supported by open standards. For example, if you again take into consideration internet, the most important standard is TCP/IP. TCP/IP is a suite of 21 protocols, and fortunately this standard is open, anyone can utilize it. So, in this way standards like HTTP, SMTP, POP, these all are open standards, part of TCP/IP, and making internet a grand success. So, these two building blocks are giving us two beautiful products for the last 10 years or so. One is the open access publishing system, another is the open learning system. In this particular deliberation, we will be learning that open access publishing system and open learning systems are closely related, and most of the cases open learning systems are powered by the open source learning content management system like Moodle or open content. So, both open source software like Moodle, Brihaspati, .rla, NoCW, these are the all LCMS, learning content management software available in the domain, and these are when coupled with the open content we call OER. So, that actually makes the open learning system. So, lot many new concepts came, and as teacher we need to have subject knowledge as well as a little bit of knowledge on this new emerging concepts. Let me give you one example. I already talked about the shift already happened. Now, let me give you one particular example that I took here knowingly an older database produced by American Library Association, where they actually plotted the number of new journals. So, blue bar indicates the print journals and maroon bar indicates e-journals. So, they plotted number of new journals in different disciplines, universe of knowledge as a whole, appeared per year basis from the year 1991 to 2006. So, you see first online journal appeared in the year 1996. Within 4 years it outnumbered print journals, and you see the situation in 2006. The new e-journals introduced in different disciplines actually jumped into around 3000, and print journal reduced to 4 to 5. So, this is a kind of shift. All kind of academic resources we are utilizing for our day to day teaching, learning, evaluation purposes are basically moving towards the e direction. These are nowadays all available as e-journals, e-books, open educational resources and so on. The other backdrops are also very interesting. I will be coming to India. Let me cover the world first. So, more people are alive now than have lived and died in the entirety of human history put together. So, it is a fact. In 1 minute, that means in 60 seconds, we are getting almost 10 GB of textual data. Millions of blog posting, millions of social networking posting, Twitters, video conferencing and different other things if you take into consideration. So, per minute we are getting almost 10 GB of data thrown to us. So, another interesting turnaround. More than 150 million people will be born in this year, and they will be born into an information economy. Never has information been so important in the whole human civilization. Information is power. Never has technology been so focused on the access of information. Nowadays you take any technology available with you, the sole focus is either on information processing or on information communication. So, entire ICT enabled devices are basically aimed for processing of information and communication of that processed information to the end user in the lightning speed. So, most of the technologies nowadays are focused on information, and things are moving such a fast rate that our student, what they learn in their first year of university or colleges is outdated by the time they graduate. Knowledge is changing rapidly. It is very difficult to keep pace with the ongoing changes if we are not equipped enough. We are living in the world of information overload. Huge number of services are generating a huge amount of information, and please remember that too much of information is as bad as too little of information, because if you are getting too much of information, you need to be equipped with different kind of filtering techniques, different kind of pinpointed search techniques, different kind of finding aids and so on. So, at the end of the day, as a user, you are spending a lot of effort and time to find resources, to learn different kind of search services. You are learning how to evaluate resources you are getting from internet, because in internet there is no quality control. So, even how to prepare a nuclear bomb, the entire recipe is available in internet, but nobody knows surely that whether that bomb blast or not. So, that kind of scenario presently available, and most of the cases effective knowledge objects are often you will find under copyright. So, how to cope with these situations will be coming one by one, but these are the problem presently academicians are facing. So, at the end of the day you have Google. Google is your friend, and at any given point of time 3 billion users are actually logged in the Google for searching different kind of resources. But there is also certain kind of problem. Say for example, if I search something like this, it's called a novice kind of searching. I am searching environmental pollution without any kind of filtering. So it produced 1 crore 75 lakhs of documents. Now tell me, is it possible in my lifetime to go through all this kind of 1 crore 75 lakhs of document? What will be the solution? How can I find out most relevant resources against my search query from a large scale textual search engine like Google, very quickly and very efficiently? So here library professional can help academicians how to get rid of this kind of problem, and I will be coming how to tackle Google later on this presentation. So when you are nowadays when you try to find out some information object, so your logical starting point is always the internet, and you always jump to the search engine. But please take a note that in web searching, millions of resources are available. It is something like you are finding a needle in the haystack sometimes. So you need to know, or you need to have an idea what are the tools available to tackle different kind of web resources. So there are mainly 3 kind of search tools available. It's the subject directory. There are 2 kinds of subject directory: academic subject directory and commercial subject directory. There are search engines. Search engines is also is of 2 types. One is the text based search engine like Google, Yahoo, Alta Vista, Northern Light, or visual search engine. There are many visual search engines are coming nowadays. Their resource base is limited, but they are giving you some kind of intuitive user interface to find out your resources in a better way. And the third one is the meta search engine. Meta search engines are search engine of search engines. They do not have any kind of backend database like a large search engine like Google. What they do, they have an agreement with different kind of search engines. You give your query inside a meta search engine, they carry forward your query at the same time to n number of search engines at the back end and collect data for you. So it is actually helping you to roam around different kind of search services available in the internet. So if we make a comparative study, which particular tools we should use during our endeavor for obtaining different kind of educational resources for building our e-learning services. So this is a comparative study. Subject directories are basically made by human indexer. Relevancy is ensured because human judgment is there. They follow categorization of knowledge techniques, something like classification schemes of a library. They divide the knowledge into different hierarchies: first level, second level, third level, and so on. They have their own databases, and typical range is millions of pages. And when it is useful, when you need a set of highly relevant documents, but few in number. Say against my search on nanotechnology, I want to need 25 to 30 highly relevant documents which are judged by human experts. Their relevance is judged by human experts. So subject directory is a very good tool to start with when you are searching something unknown about. Then comes the search engine. They are based on the automatic crawling. So their mechanism is that they have a kind of program called robot. They search different kind of they crawl through different kind of hyperlinks and finally send back to the server the pages they find. So relevance is not at all ensured because they tend to index every word available in that particular document, excluding some junk words. They follow page ranking algorithm mostly because so that the most relevant documents comes in the first 1 or 2 sets. They have their own databases, and typical range is billions of pages. When it is useful, when you need to explore what is available in public domain exhaustively. And meta search engine, as I told, they are the federated search program. They have agreement with different kind of search engines. So, they are based on the search engine resources. They collect information, they do not check duplicates, and they send simply to you. So, when these tools are useful, when you want to do a very comprehensive search, suppose some kind of concept or idea or terminology, you are not getting enough resources in different search engine. So, in that case you better go to the meta search engine. They can search an array of search engine databases on behalf of you. You do not have to go individually to each search engines. So, this is a complex scenario that on the one hand we have the volume and variety of resources are huge on one hand, and on the other hand we simply do not know what are the tools that can help us and how to search, how to obtain resource very quickly. So, user badly need help, and library professionals should come forward through different kind of tools and techniques they know in their they know, because they actually go through this kind of resources in their syllabus. How librarians can help you in academia? They can help you to navigate through the tyranny of choices. Information overload is a strong enemy. So, different kind of retrieval silos in libraries are not actually providing the right kind of information. So, you need to know, you need to integrate different kind of external resources inside our library services. We need to different kind of pathfinder, need to develop different kind of pathfinder services, subject category services, which we normally call subject plus services inside our library service, inside our different kind of library information services, so that they can help our academia to find out resource efficiently, effectively, and in a timely manner. So, if we want to make a summary of the problems so far we encountered, one is the large size of the web. The best search engine only covers 20% of the web. Search tools are limited by different kind of cross-disciplinary semantic drift, and most often after spending hours in searching, you find that most important scholarly materials are under copyright, and academicians suffer a lot in all over the world, and people are thinking a new concept of information retrieval related to e-learning and different kind of other learning support system, that is called copyleft system or open access system. And huge number of resources, academic resources are available that we can utilize in building our different kind of e-learning activities, because these are all licensed against Creative Commons, and Creative Commons license document you can utilize freely inside your e-learning system. But before going to demonstrate you different kind of tools and resources related to e-learning, let me again tell you that search skill is very important for an academicians, and knowledge of different kind of information services in the internet is a must nowadays. So, let me quote Samuel Johnson, who said once that knowledge is of two types. There are two facets of knowledge: what is the knowledge and where is the knowledge. As a teacher, you are subject expert, you know what is the knowledge, but the cycle of knowledge is never completed if you know if you do not know actually where is the knowledge. So, there in case of e-learning also, this particular facet, where is the knowledge, is very important for us. And every search, every research here, research does not mean that does not always mean that you are planning to have a doctoral dissertation on a particular topic. Research means here a kind of endeavor where you are trying to find out some information, some resources on a given topic. that can be based even on your class assignment. Sometimes your when you are writing an article, you need lot many different information, new kind of information. So then you need to go through different kind of resources, and simply we do not have an idea how many types of resources are there, what should be acquired first, and how to conduct our search. So right from your nursery school days to your teaching career, the entire information resources you have encountered can be categorized broadly into three groups: primary information sources, secondary information sources, and tertiary information sources. So primary sources are actually includes the novel, new information, and those are actually get accumulated or consolidated in different kind of secondary information, and secondary informations are again listed into tertiary sources. Let me give you one example. Say when you are writing an article and trying to publish that article in a journal, so that journal is a primary information source, because that is actually reporting the first hand information, the novel information. Now suppose you imagine any discipline, say for example chemistry. Now there are 10,000 plus journals all over the world in the domain of chemistry alone. Now if we consider each particular journal produced one volume per year, and each volume contains 10 issues per annum, and each issue contains 10 articles in it, then you see after 1 year you are getting almost 1 lakhs of articles in the domain of chemistry alone. Now when you are searching something on a given topic in chemistry, you cannot go through all these 1 lakhs of articles produced by 10,000 journals. You need only 10-15 relevant documents. So how to find out those particular resources without scanning all 10,000 journal papers? So there comes the role of secondary information sources, like your indexing service, your abstracting services, your electronic databases, your review journals, and this kind of sources. Then all primary and secondary information services are listed in tertiary sources, because suppose in a domain of chemistry you simply do not know how many abstracting and indexing services are there, how many electronic databases are there. So there you need a tertiary source. So my point is that information flows from primary to tertiary, but our search must be started from tertiary to primary. By consulting a tertiary source like directory, say for example in case of journals, we have Ulrich International Periodical Directory, which can give us a list alphabetically by subject on a given domain of knowledge. So by consulting that particular source, we can discover different kind of secondary sources. From secondary information sources we can search, and it will lead us to the primary sources of information. But without knowing this particular ecosystem, if we directly jumped into the primary information sources, then we will be wasting our time. And the same model is also quite relevant for the online information system. For example, Google, for most of you, Google is your favorite search engine. So Google is also a kind of tertiary source. You see, Google indexes websites. Websites includes different kind of web document in the form of HTML, PDF, doc, etc. So those are the primary document available in websites. Websites are indexed in Google. You are searching through Google. Google is leading you to the website, and finally you are getting that particular primary document. So the same tertiary, secondary, and primary model is also quite prevalent in online information search system. So this is an example. What are the primary sources of information? Periodical, research report, conference proceeding, patent, standards. These are all actually reporting your first-hand research information. Then those are consolidated and repackaged into different secondary sources, indexing services, abstracting services. For example, in case of chemistry, chemical abstract, then different kind of databases like SciFinder Scholar, etc. Then reviews, reference books, treatise, monograph, textbooks. All the textbooks we are following for our teaching learning purposes are all secondary sources of information. They never report you the primary information or first hand information. The books which are actually reporting the first hand information, those are called treatise, and this primary and secondary information again listed in the tertiary sources, different kind of directories, bibliographies, bibliography of bibliographies, list of research in progress, and so on. So, if we are comfortable with this model, then let me tell you as a teacher, then when you are searching some kind of information, you have three kind of sources: primary, secondary, and tertiary, and four specific approaches. You search an academic information resource only for the following four need. One is the current approach. That means I am an expert in a particular field, but I want to know what happened, what new things happened in my domain for in the last 7 days or last 30 days. So, that is called current approach. Everyday approach. In some discipline, when you enter inside your workflow, you need to have a set of information before you start your work. For example, pharmaceutical scientist and financial analyst, they need to have a set of information before starting their job. So, that is called everyday approach. That is the this set of information I need every day for my work. Exhaustive approach. I want to know everything on this particular area. So, every time you are making a Google search without giving any kind of filtering, you are making an exhaustive search, because there is no filter for time, no filter for any kind of other limitations. So, exhaustive search means I want to know everything on a given domain for the last several years. So, that exhaustive approach normally we follow in case of Google searching. And the fourth one is really very interesting, which is called catching up approach. Suppose you are an expert in the domain of chemistry, but you want to start a interdisciplinary research work which involves some concepts of biology. So, there you are a layman. So, catching up approach is that I am a domain expert in a particular area of knowledge, but I want to learn very quickly other domain of knowledge without taking much difficulties. So, that kind of catching up approach, which is very important for interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary research work, are nowadays prevalent, and catching up approach is quickly giving you a set of tools which help you to get basic knowledge about a subject in which you are not an expert. So, finally, at the end of the day, when you are searching something for your academic purpose, for your teaching learning purpose, you are having three kind of resources: primary, secondary, and tertiary, and four kinds of approaches. So, if this model is true, then what are the problems with this particular situation? Why I am telling you all these kind of things? Because of some problems. The problem is that most of the cases you find out that after spending lot many hours in your machine, in your internet, you are finding a set of resources, and at the end of the day, many of those resources, many of the important resources you have find out are basically under copyright. So, internet itself is a kind of restaurant where menu card is available, but the moment you order something, you order some food stuff, the waiter of that particular restaurant is saying that you are not entitled to enjoy this particular food. So, this kind of system is prevalent in case of internet, and there comes the open knowledge system. So, open knowledge system is actually a concept started in the year in the late 80s actually, and it started by the experts in physics in Los Alamos University, But nowadays this open knowledge movement is actually very popular throughout the world, particularly amongst academia. So, it supports open submission, open peer review and open access without any kind of discretion, and most of the cases data, content and general informations are available under it. So, I will be showing you that how millions and millions of resources you can have through this open access channels. So, knowledge is open if it is free to use, reuse and redistribute without any social, legal and technological restrictions. I do hope that many of your college have access to Enlist. Enlist you are getting against a minimum membership fees, but please remember that there is nothing called free lunch. We are paying less, but Ministry of PhD is paying a huge sum of money to the foreign publisher for making these resources available to us. At the university level, we are enjoying UGC Infonet. Enlist is basically a stripped down version of UGC Infonet, but these are all resources you are getting, although these are limited in nature, but against a huge cost paid by our government. So, before entering into the code of the open learning and open access, let me explain you this slide, that you all are doing research in the lab or in the field. You are writing your manuscript, then you are sending your paper to different kind of Scopus index journals or journals with high impact factor, then finally your paper published. So, when your paper published, what happened to that particular paper? It actually comes to a particular library. The libraries are these are called bound volume of journals, and bound volumes are journal kept in alphabetical order in different libraries in large stacks rooms. Again, suppose your paper available in any of these bound volume, again one fine morning another researcher working in your research area find out your paper, he or she read it, then again started writing something. So, my point is that it is basically a information transfer cycle. We consume information because we want to contribute information, and as an academia you all know this. So, but it is okay. What is the problem? Why I am saying again this known facts? Because you see, one problem started happening in our domain, in the entire higher education and research domain. If you take 1986 as the base year, up to 2002, journal price increased in the tune of 222%, whereas during this period the consumer price index increased only in the tune of plus 64%. So, most of the cases when you write a paper, do the are you getting any kind of honorarium from the publisher? Do they pay you? No. When your that paper comes to your senior faculty member for review and for peer review for quality control purposes, do they pay them? No. Then why they are charging this much money for subscription of journals? Nobody knows. So, every year it is increasing, and there is a very good blog posting by Stephen Harnett in this particular URL, you can read it. And from 2002 onwards, we again made one of the Harvard research scholar again made a study that from 1986 to 2010, the journal price increased in the tune of plus 400%, and the same thing is applicable to e-books also. So, on the one hand we have different kind of open contents, and on the other hand subscription rate is increasing in an exorbitant way, and libraries cannot afford that kind of cost acceleration. So, as a result we are getting serials crisis. You are writing your paper, your senior colleagues are editing it, but you do not have access to those journals because of the cost barrier. So, there lies the role of open access system, And in India, another interesting factor is going on, that is called double edge payment system. So suppose UGC funded me to do a kind of research, then the moment I got something good, I tend to write my paper or and publish in a foreign journal, and again my library is buying that particular journal in foreign currency, and 95% of the libraries in India are government supported. So what is happening? Government of India first supporting you to do the research, they are funding your research, and again they are buying the research report what they have already funded. So this kind of double edge payment system is very much prevalent in India. So that is actually scenario for the entire developing bloc of the world. So as a whole, we can say that this kind of scholarly communication model is giving us publishing barrier, because research is publicly funded, your personal academic effort supported by the institution, but at the end of the day you are signing away all of your rights with the publisher, and you are not getting anything from them, and publishers are making huge amount of profit on the basis of your intellectual labor, and authors get no tangible reward apart from your career progresses and your job profile increases. Another interesting thing is the cost barrier. Libraries cannot subscribe to all journals, and during the period from 2013 to 2017, library budget is actually reduced to -29%. This is actually based on the ALA report on open access published in 2018. So the entire world is moving towards open access to knowledge, and this particular model is closely related with our e-learning scenario. So open access to knowledge is, as I told you already, that these are including data, content and general information, and access is always free, and the process is supported through open submission and open peer review. Wikipedia defined that open access means any user can access knowledge from anywhere through the internet. They can download, store, print, use and data mine the digital content of those knowledge resources. Then Budapest Open Access Initiative declared way back in 2014 that free availability of the research article or publication and for any lawful purpose is one of the characteristics of the open knowledge movement. So two factors actually driven this kind of revolution, which actually led to OER revolution also, or open learning system also. So these are the academic factor: serials crisis, we don't have access to journals, rise of different kind of interdisciplinary research, and different kind of channels of communication among research have changed. So these are the academic factor, and technological factor which help to actually build this open knowledge avenues are growth of internet, open source software for almost every kind of activities, and rise of different kind of web 2.0 tools. So in one sense you can summarize that in open access model knowledge can be submitted online, can be peer reviewed online, can be edited online, can be published online, can be distributed online, can be used online at very low cost and in lightning speed. So if you go through the history of open access movement, it started in 1980s. Actually the arXiv, the first subject based online archive, and Los Alamos University started in 1991. Then different kind of sister projects, important sister project came. One is such as Sherpa Romeo project. In 2007, UGC India passed regulation that every university must develop their institutional digital repository to showcase faculty publication, and all kind of faculty publication and research object must be available in through open access channels. So the result is, one of the good result is the development of Shodh Ganga, which is acting as a showcase of Indian research output. So this kind of initiatives are going on throughout the world, including India. And Berlin Declaration on Open Access said a very interesting thing, that if we share, we are halfway there. So sharing of and dissemination of knowledge is also very important, just like the production of knowledge is important. So the entire open access scenario can be divided into two groups. One is called the gold path, another is called the green path. Now gold path means when you are publishing your paper or book chapters directly in open access journals or open access books, these are called gold path. And green path is slightly complex, when you are publishing your paper in a commercial journal, but one copy of your paper, when you are making it available through any kind of open access repositories, it is called green path of open access. So there lies lot many legal challenges, and I will be coming again to these legal challenges, because I already said you that when you are writing a paper and submitting to a journal, you are giving away your copyright to the publisher. Then again I am telling you that you can submit one copy of your paper in any open access repository in the public domain, so that others can read and download and print and use. There is no contradictory actually. The green path is also supported by different kind of legalities, and I will be coming to that legalities, but before that let me tell you, as I said, that tertiary information sources is very important for us. So in case of open access knowledge also, in finding OER and open knowledge object, there are many important tertiary tools like DOAJ developed by Lund University. Then there is different kind of tertiary sources related to the open access repositories, so that you can find out how many repositories are available in the domain of chemistry or in the domain of economics. So Pathfinder services are there. Two services are very important. One is called ROR, Registry of Open Access Repositories, and another is called Open Door. So ROR is actually running by University of Southampton, and Open Door is actually running by University of Nottingham. Now again I am coming to the legal point. So when you are writing a paper, that paper has got three versions. One is called the preprint versions before sending to the editorial board. Then comes the exact published version, which is published and uploaded by the publisher. Then after publication, you are making some kind of changes in your paper, in your data sets, in your conclusion, in your introduction, that become post print. So one particular paper has got three versions: preprint, exact published version, and post print version. So legally you can submit your preprint or post print in any kind of open access repositories, but not the exact published version which bears the logo of the publisher. So how can we be sure about this? So there is a sister project on open access running, which is called Sherpa Romeo. Sherpa Romeo is actually helping us to know the nature of the publisher, and it has been found that more than 75% of the publishers are basically supporting some kind of archiving. Now there are four kind of archiving policies available, and the entire publishers can be divided into four groups: green publishers, blue publishers, yellow publisher, and white publisher. Green supports both pre and post print archiving, blue supports only post print archiving, yellow supports only preprint archiving, and white supports nothing. So if you are sure that your publisher is green publisher, then you can archive any of your pre or post print services. Now how to know that? Sherpa Romeo has a very good search interface. I will try to show you in live also. So there, suppose I search by BMC Publishing Group. So it can tell me that author can archive preprint, author can archive postprint. So it's a Romeo green publisher. So in this way I can search by the name of the publisher, by the title of the journal, or by the ISSN number of the journal. So it will tell me that whether I can archive it or not, and if I can archive, what version I should archive. So you are completely legally safe in archiving your already published work. And the other way around is that as many people are archiving their papers, so if you know what are the tools to be utilized, then you can surely access these resources. Before moving into the demonstration mode, let me tell you another one very important concept, that is called Creative Commons licensing system. There are different varieties of Creative Commons licensing system. The most liberal is CC 0, and slightly restrictive is CC BY NC ND. NC means non-commercial, ND means non-derivative. So this particular matrix can tell you that what rights you are enjoying against a particular Creative Commons license, and every knowledge object is supported by open knowledge object is supported by one of the Creative Commons licensing system mentioned here. So you need to be very careful that what rights you are having when you are downloading an open knowledge object, and what right you are giving when you are uploading your particular paper or book chapter as open knowledge object. So according to that, you need to select your own licensing system. So Creative Commons is mainly based on or mainly related with open knowledge objects. So another very good initiative is coming up, that is called rightstatesman.org. They are covering both in copyright, no copyright, and orphan object. So suppose a photograph you are having in the library, you simply do not know who was the cameraman, who owned this particular photograph or a painting, then that particular thing is called orphan or cultural object. And how you can deal with that orphan cultural object, Creative Commons licensing system gives no clue to us, but rightstatesman.org gives us a clue, and this is very important to know, particularly for librarians, how to deal with the orphan knowledge object or cultural object available inside a library. Another very interesting research made by Steve Lawrence and published in Nature, he said that if your knowledge products are available online freely in full text format, then chances of getting citation is higher. So if open knowledge, your papers available as open knowledge objects, increasing the visibility of your research and attracting much more citations in compare with the closed access materials. India is doing quite good in open access movement. We have many resources. Most of the elite educational institutes and universities have got their own institutional digital repository. All are listed, mostly they are listed in either in RODE or Open Door. In DOAJ listed 278 number of journals from India. Indian Academy of Science publishing all of their journals as open access journal. Similarly, CSIR, all CSIR publications are nowadays available in open access avenue. INSA, Indian National Science Academy, is also following the same path. So I hope that a little bit of idea you are now having with this open knowledge object, and let me go to the live demonstration mode to show you a different kind of search tools. So first thing is that I said that you need a good searching technique to survive in this information overload domain. So suppose I am searching environmental pollution in your most favorite search engine, Google. Now the moment I search environmental pollution, you see here Google gives me 39 crore 60 lakhs of document. It's a live search. Now let me show you that how I can pinpoint this search very effectively. Say I am searching environmental pollution as a phrase. That phrase I need to have in title of this particular object. So that means if this particular phrase is available as title of a document, that particular document is very relevant for my search. So here special keywords I am using, all in title, colon, no space before and no space after, then the phrase environmental pollution, and you see the improvement. So the moment I said, so from 39 crores 60 lakhs, it reduced to 2 crores 2 lakhs. Then suppose I can again pinpoint that most of the academic resources are available in PDF format, so I can restrict the format of the retrieval as PDF or as doc. So formula is very simple. File type is basically the special keywords, and you can use here any extension PDF or doc file. So if I enter again, you see almost all documents will be available in PDF format, and it reports me only 7,320 results. So we reduced our result, we made a quantum jump, we reduced our result from 39 crores to 7,000 plus. Then again I can pinpoint that these resources I want from India, site colon in. Site is the special keywords and in is the top level domain for India. Now every resource will be coming from India, and there are 387 results. So my point is that if we do not know how to search effectively, then in this age of information overload, where different channels are available, different open contents are available in huge amount, we cannot discover our relevant resources. So I request the participant librarian to help academician in searching, and to tell them how they can search in a better way and in a pinpointed way. So this is all about the Google search. Now let me switch over to different kind of open access tertiary sources which are very relevant for obtaining a knowledge object to support our teaching, learning, evaluation process. First one, as I said, DOAJ. DOAJ is developed by Lund University initially. You can search journals and articles. You can filter in many ways. There are 14,000 plus journals, and altogether 49 lakhs of articles available from DOAJ. So this is the tertiary source or meta source for the Goldpath. Then you can have OpenDoor. OpenDoor is a tertiary source for the open access repositories. We can found different kind of repositories or throughout the globe, depending by either we can browse by country or we can search by different kind of keywords, or we can again browse by different kind of domain specific subject area. For example, if I want to know how many open access repositories are there in the domain of economics, what I will do, I will go to the advanced search, we will go to the subject domain. Say for example education I want to find out, so I will select education, and if I now search, you see all educational resources or open knowledge object resources available in the domain of education will be listed alphabetically. Any of these I can search and retrieve. So there is a good source developed by University of Nottingham. Then there is, just like DOAJ, there is a directory of open access book where many open access monographs you can search and you can download in full format. So altogether there are 30,000, almost 30,000 academic peer reviewed books you can have, including your research monographs as well as your textbooks which you can refer to your students. Then you already know Shodhganga. Shodhganga is the Indian showcase of research, but similarly in the same line many countries came up with their own research thesis repositories. For example, NDLTD for US, Ethos for UK, and so on. Shodhganga for India. So I do not recommend you to go through individual thesis repositories from different countries in US, UK, India, and Japan. So instead of doing that, you can directly come to a site called oatt.org, Open Access Thesis and Dissertation, which harvest metadata from different repositories of the world and collect those in a central index and provide us a single window search interface for the entire thesis, master's level, MPhil level, PhD level from here. So I can search here and I can have the full text of the document instead of moving towards NDLTD or Ethos or Shodhganga. So 30 million plus full text thesis available from this. It's a huge resource. You better explore it. Then you all know the archive.org or Internet Archive. So Internet Archive started in the year 2005 a special collection on educational resources or open educational resources from different resources. So archive.org/education, this is the resource we are having. You can see the address from here. So this is the address. Huge amount of open educational resources are available from this Internet Archive. Then comes another interesting thing, I will be coming later on, but before that let me tell you another tool developed by librarians for as a single window search interface for entire open access resources. So this is developed by a German university, by the central library of that university, that is called Base Search, Bielefeld academic search engine developed by University of Bielefeld. Now this is the site base-search.net. So you can note down and you can search. Let me try one search here. So this particular search engine is much more advanced in compare with your Google search. So I am searching here something on welfare economics. You see here, the moment I search, it is based on an open source software. So open content, open source software, open standards, all merging together to form a better world and better educational system. So here you see, these are the resources. This is the symbol for open access. I can restrict my search even in title, author, and subject. In Google, you have seen I can restrict my search in title, but I cannot search by author or by subject. So here I can search by author, by subject, and I can have these tools. I don't have to know from where it is coming. There is a single central index. I can search all open contents available throughout the world from a single interface. I can filter by different kind of filtering techniques, by subject, by class number, by year of publication, and so on. And if I go to the advanced search, you see here advanced search, many filters are available. Even I can select types of the document. So if I uncheck, then I can check I want only journal article. I can select different kind of licensing agreement. I can select country and continent of origin, and I can give this range search from this year to that year. In this way, we can trinket the advanced search interface of base. Apart from that, we can also browse by call number just by your library. Say for example, I want to browse by DDC number. So here first order, second order and third order, clustering will be there. So this is the first order. Suppose I am interested in social science, so the second order listing of social sciences will be coming. I am interested in say economics, so third divisions under economics will be coming, and within bracket numbers of documents available as open content will be shown. So this is these tools are very interesting tools when you are dealing or discovering different kind of open knowledge resources. Now again I am moving towards our presentation. Now I am coming to OER. So you already have an idea that how things are changing, how open contents and open knowledge movement is coming up in a big way, and open educational resources and open learning system is simply a byproduct of that particular movement. So let's try to explore how we can find out very quickly different kind of open educational resources. So we have so far completed open access tertiary tools related with the open access knowledge objects. Now we are trying to find out specific tools meant for finding out OER or open educational resources. So OER, these are building block of e-learning system, and this can be repurposed, this can be freely utilized. Your open educational resource developed by you, if it is available under Creative Commons license, I can utilize inside my course. Similarly, when I developed a particular video tutorial or particular knowledge object against Creative Commons licensing, you can utilize in your course. So in this way, open educational resources are growing in an exorbitant rate, and there are many tools through which you can find out different kind of relevant open educational resources for your domain. Now open educational resources are acting as a building block for the entire e-learning scenario, whether it's a digital learning or virtual learning or managed learning. So there is a difference between the digital learning, virtual learning and managed learning environment. Digital learning is actually providing your course content over a network in an interactive manner. But when that digital environment is coupled with or merged with different kind of virtual communication tools, both asynchronous mode of communication and synchronous mode of communication, that is called virtual learning environment. And when virtual learning environment is attached with your other institutional subsystems like financial subsystem, admission subsystem, library subsystem, then we call it managed learning environment. So open educational resources are acting as building block of all these DLE, VLE and MLE. Now how your VLE is different from traditional learning environment? In VLE, learning materials and resources must be available within the system. In traditional learning environment, resources are available within a library and beyond the classroom. VLE is supported by the online assessment, TLE is supported by the physical examination. VLE is actually powered by user driven time and learning schedule, whereas our TLE, traditional learning environment, is based on factory model. It is basically institution driven time and learning schedule. VLE is coupled with different kind of virtual communication tools like discussion forum, relay chat, video conferencing. But in case of traditional learning environment, we have only classroom. In VLE, we can track every second of a learner inside the learning content management system. So I can know what my student is doing, why he or she is not actually interested in this particular video tutorial after 15 or 20 minutes. So that can be tracked. But in case of traditional learning environment, we still have only registered and tutor records, and we cannot know what my students or learners are doing beyond classroom. So OER can support VLE and MLE. It is associated with different kind of advantages. free to access, you can repurpose it, you can utilize your different kind of pedagogical innovations. Accessibility of resources saves time and effort and lower cost in education. Disadvantages are also there. Disadvantages like it quality varies. It's very development of OER is a very time commitment job. We need to know lot many tools. Suppose the famous model of e-learning in India is 4-quadrant model. So there we need to create our video tutorial also. So we need to know different kind of skin casting software, different kind of skin capturing software, different kind of video tutorial software, and how to merge different kind of video, how to edit video, how to mix different kind of audio tracks with the video objects. So these are actually skills associated with the development of open educational resources. So the first global open access repositories related to learning developed by MIT, that is called MIT Open Courseware. Then different kind of global initiatives are also there, like YOLO signed tools are basically quite big and famous. One is the Marlot, Joseph OCW, they are also using the MIT OCW software, MIT OCW, OpenEL courses. So these are global giants, but there are many connections, but there are many other initiatives taken by different global universities and coming in a big way. So when you are trying to find out different kind of open educational resources, you need to focus on learning object repositories, OER search engines, and different kind of OER directories. I would like to advise you to 3 services to start with. One is the OER Commons. OER Commons is a unique kind of resources. I will also try to show you in live that where you can download the entire package, open educational package, according to the educational level and standard. Suppose I want to create a course on physics on for the class 10 student. So I can select a subject, I can select your educational level, I can select your standard, I can search, I will obtain a package learning product from OER, which I can what I can utilize in my e-learning system, because all of these materials are actually based on Creative Commons licensing system. Then the second interesting thing is the OE consortium. So there are many OER consortium available throughout the world. So this Open Education Consortium is a global tool through which you can discover open educational resources distributed throughout the world. Search interface is very intuitive. You can try, you can in one central index, just like your base search engine, you can come here, you can search global open educational resources available in different consortium on open educational resources. Next interesting thing is the Teaching Commons. Teaching Commons is basically a platform for teachers where many teachers who are interested in e-learning came together to form a platform. They shared their knowledge objects with each other and upload the knowledge object in this particular platform. So it's a kind of open repository, free open repository for different kind of learning object. So you can browse by subject area, by type of the material, or by institution, or you can search in free text and full text. So different kind of huge number of resources are available through Teaching Commons also. So these 3 things better to start with when you are finding out your OER. One is the OER Common, second is the Teaching Common, and third is the OE Consortium. And you also please remember the tools developed by, or the open learning resource repositories developed by Marlot, Joseph, MIT OCW, OpenEL, and Connexion. So there are different kind of OER specific search engines are also coming. As I am going to share this PDF with you, All these tools are listed alongside along with their respective URL. So you can copy the URL from here and you can try to find out different kind of OER specific search engine. So in the left side I have given OER specific repositories, so different kind of global repositories including MIT, OCW, Marlot, etc. And here I have given a list of search engines specific to OER. So all of them are good, all are tried and tested, and you can find out open educational resources very quickly, very efficiently, and most of them are licensed against Creative Commons. So 2-3 guidelines or guidebooks I can recommend to you, and the URLs are given. So this is the faculty guide for evaluating open education resources. So all the open educational resources you are discovering, you are exploring, you are obtaining, they must be evaluated on the basis of different kind of relevance, accuracy, production quality, accessibility, interactivity, and licensing system. So how to go through all kind of this guiding framework, so that particular faculty guide can help you. UNESCO developed very interesting product by the Commonwealth of Learning. They have given responsibility to the COL, Commonwealth of Learning, Open Educational Resources, Policy, Cost and Transformation. Those who are teachers who are interested in the development, history, development and future direction of open educational resources may consult this valuable document available from UNESCO Document Archive. And these are the different kind of resources what I found throughout my journey in e-learning. I listed here alongside the URL and a YouTube video which is actually telling you how can you turn a particular resource into an open educational resources. Suppose you have a few text, PowerPoint slides, then how can you merge and categorize and systematically organize those resources. Step by step approach is given in this particular video. So these are the resources you can consult if you are interested in open educational resources. Now if I come to the Indian initiatives in different aspects of e-learning, apart from the global MOOCs and etc., we are going in the same line of Open edX, Coursera, etc. So Indian initiative started way back in the decade of mid 90s through Consortium for Educational Communication, normally we call it CEC, an inter-university consortium under UGC. So there they developed different kind of learning object digital repository way back in 1995, and till date these are available. So this is one of the historical initiative made by Government of India. Then the eGankos, a learning object repository developed by Indira Gandhi National Open University by using an open source archiving software called DSpace. Most of the librarians know very well how to handle DSpace, how to prepare open learning repositories and open access repositories through by utilizing DSpace. So Indira Gandhi National Open University or IGNOU developed their eGankos as a learning object repository where all course material right from the certificate to the PG level are available under different schools. Users or learners can browse or they can search and they can obtain if they have login and password. It's completely free of cost. Then another development took place by the same Consortium for Educational Communication. They developed subject specific learning object repositories available under the web address I have given, cec-lor.edu.in. NPTEL developed by IIT Madras as a learning portal for engineering students. Then the newest one is the SIAM. SIAM is you may consider as an Indian MOOCs. It is actually based on the model called or built on the top of Open edX. Open edX you all know. Then basically this is a platform where huge number of learners can be accommodated for any number of courses. So, that is actually the massiveness of any kind of MOOC platform. So, if you go through the ecosystem of SWAYAM, the learners are there, there are various kind of training providers, different central and state universities are acting as partners of SWAYAM platform, and a different kind of examination partners, because SWAYAM supports protected examination system. So, they need examination partners. So, this is the entire ecosystem of SWAYAM. Multiple delivery channels are there, and student can access course material by utilizing computer, mobile, and even offline through DTH. A sister project is also coming up in a big way, that is called SWAYAM Prabha, where SWAYAM course content will be delivered to the user through DTH channel. Because of the bandwidth constraint in India, video tutorials in SWAYAM are not quite useful for the learners who are staying at the remote part of the country. So, for them TV based delivery of course materials is going on, and the project is called SWAYAM Prabha. So, SWAYAM is actually based on the 4 quadrant approach, and every time you please remember this 4 quadrant approach is very important. Quadrant 1 is e-tutorial, quadrant 2 is the e-content, quadrant 3 is a different kind of further reading list kind of thing, and mostly open knowledge objects must be given there by following a standard format like APA, MLA, Chicago, etc. And quadrant 4 is basically the self assessment. So, the entire e-learning initiative in India must be based on 4 quadrant approach as proposed by the Ministry of HRD. I will be showing you a live demonstration also. So, I am associated with 2 SWAYAM courses, database content organization and library automation and digitization. The 3 of us are actually running this particular course, Professor A.R.D. Prasad, myself, and Professor Uma Kanjilal. We have last time we have 5,600 students enrolled. So, the entire syllabus or course curricula is based on week. So, it is a 11-week course. So, each week we give 4 quadrant model of learning object, and then it is supported finally by evaluation, 2 evaluation, quiz 1 and quiz 2. Another big event or big initiative actually taken by INFLIP UGC. This is called EPG Pathshala, available from epgp.inflipnet.ac.in. So, they are also following 4 quadrant model. They are presently providing e-content in 77 subjects, and each subject has got 560 modules, and this is also based on 4 quadrant approach, that is e-text, video tutorial, then further reading list and self assessment. The entire e-learning ecosystem of India has got many national coordinators. So, these are the list of national coordinators for different kind of MOOCs courses. UGC is responsible for non-technology based PG degree programs. NPTEL is responsible for technological and engineering domain UG and PG degree programs. Consortium for Educational Communication, as I said, and IUC, Inter-University Consortium of UGC, they are basically responsible for non-technology based undergraduate program. IGNOU is responsible for different kind of diplomas and certificate. NCERT is actually responsible for or entrusted with the school education from class 9 to 12. NIOS is also responsible for school education from class 9 to 12. IIM Bangalore entrusted with the management program and NITTR Chennai is actually responsible for different kind of teachers training program. The latest one of this model is called ORPIT. ORPIT you all know, so it is actually initiated by NITTR with the help of different partner institutes. Swayamprabha is actually, as I told, it's a sister project of SWAYAM. It's a DTH project for educational excellence, and in view of the poor bandwidth in remote India, so this DTH is actually a concept and it is working in a good way. One of the recent initiatives of InflipNet is in the development of an online learning portal to access all e-content project or e-content material developed under NME ICT, National Mission on Education through Information and Communication Technology of Ministry of PHRD. So Vidyamitra is available from vidyamitra.inflipnet.ac.in. Here you can search entire e-learning scenario of India. You can search by course content, you can search by different kind of resource person, you can search by subject, etc. Now we are almost at the end of the discussion. Now many questions are popping up in your mind, so some of this I can address before you ask it. So these are the 6 questions: how to sensitize a college teacher about SWAYAM and e-learning? Can API score be achieved through SWAYAM? If yes, who can score it? How a college teacher can score API through SWAYAM? And how SWAYAM is associated with the career advancement system or career advancement scheme, and how to transfer credit in online learning. So all these are actually answered by different government agencies. Let me address one by one. How to sensitize a college teacher about SWAYAM? That means through demonstration, this kind of seminar, this kind of webinars, etc. The $1,000,000 question is, can API be scored through SWAYAM? If you go through the latest UGC regulation published in August 2018, the page number 105, table number 2 says that if you are developing a MOOC course in 4-quadrant format, 4-quadrant is very essential, you will be getting 20 per courses or per MOOCs courses. If you are participating in MOOCs by developing unit, module, lecture, etc., so you will be scoring 5 for each such e-content available through MOOCs platform. If you are course coordinator, then you will be getting 8 per courses. Apart from MOOCs, if you are developing any other e-content, suppose in your college you are starting an e-learning system and you have developed a course, you will be getting 12. If you are contributing a unit or module, you will be getting 5 per module. And if you are actually contributing in development of e-content module in different kind of further reading list kind of thing, as a part of this particular program, you will be getting 0.2 for each such assistance. And if you are acting as a editor of different kind of e-content, you will be receiving 10 per editing work. So huge API marks can be scored if you are taking part in e-learning. In fact, Government of India is actually trying to encourage faculty members to take part in different kind of e-learning activities. Then how a college teacher can score API through SWAYAM as a part of the question, that how we can build up a MOOCs course through SWAYAM. So if you go through this particular program, ignuonline.ac.in SWAYAM EOI stands for expression of interest. So there, after login and registration, you will be getting login and password. Then you can upload your proposed content of your course with a 2 to 5 minute video on that particular course. Then they will take an online interview, and if they are satisfied, they will allocate a course to you. For each course in arts and humanities and social sciences, you will be getting 6 lakhs as a project funding, and for science courses you will be getting 10 lakhs as project funding. So there you can involve many people, all of you can come together to prepare a course blueprint and can submit your course proposal here, this particular address. UGC given recently direction that how in the PG level the course credit can be transferred, and a very systematic guideline has been given. Maximum 20% of the entire credit can be covered in online at the PG level, but UGC not yet come up with any such kind of guidance related to the UG courses, but definitely soon they will be coming up with some that kind of initiative. So this is the notification you can have from this is the URL where UGC notification is available. Gazette notification is also published for different kind of online courses and different kind of modus operandi associated with the online courses. And UGC MOOCs credit transfer guideline and video tutorials are available from this particular site. But point of caution is that in online starting an online course is an easy, but retaining your learners is a tough job. So this is a study from the global MOOCs that initially when they open up a particular course, there are huge number of participants, and these are called lurkers. They come, they register, but they do not follow. Then comes the drop-ins. Certain percentage of people drop out. Then there are passive participants. They do not drop out, but they do not even take part in different kind of discussion, chat services, question answer session, assignment submission, etc. So finally almost 10 to 15% of the total registered candidates complete the course. Those are called active participants. Definitely many issues are there and those are remain to be solved yet. So presently only 20% of the entire credit can be covered in online. Learning environment is not just content and self-assessment, it's something different. So how we are going to handle that one? How to mentor 30 millions of learners in a single platform? Still it's a issue. Most of the users or learners come to the platform, online platform or SIAM or MOOCs are basically window shoppers. MOOCs actually do not provide the kind of engagement to encourage learning which are actually available in the day-to-day teaching learning evaluation process. And in fact, there is a kind of mental blockage also on the part of the teachers and students. And another important issue, how to construct the protected exams for 30 million learners. So these are the challenges lying ahead, but please remember the e-learning is here. It came to stay with us. So we need to solve different kind of issues. So what I covered today is the open knowledge object, very important for developing your course material. How to find out OER, how can you search effectively, what are the resources available, what are the skills requirement for developing 4-quadrant based learning system, and different kind of rules and regulation related to your career advancement for e-learning activities. So thank you very much.